In the far southwest, France comes to an end here, amongst the waves. Behind this bay in Hendaye lies Spain. The border starts on this 200-metre by 40-metre slither of land called Pheasant Island. In 1659, King Louis XIV of France and King Philip IV of Spain signed the Treaty of the Pyrenees here, bringing the war between their countries to an end. Once the accord was signed, the border had to be physically marked out, using boundary stones which are still visible today.
We're now in the Endalatsa area, where boundary stone number 1 is located. This is the first landmarker between France and Spain.
During the reign of Napoleon III, the first block of stone was put in place, more than 2 centuries after the signing of the treaty.
I've always wanted to know how they carried it here. Was it by boat or with the help of mules? It wouldn't have been very easy because it's extremely heavy.
There are 602 stones in total between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, and each of them has a story to tell, like the one positioned at the top of La Rune, the first mountain on the western edge of the Pyrenees. In the first days of spring, this little train chugs back into service for the tourist season.
And we're off.
For nearly 100 years, these wooden carriages have been carrying tourists 905 metres above sea level and at a gentle 9 kilometres an hour.
La Rune is the biggest peak at the start of the Pyrenees. La Rune means good pasture.
At the end of the line, there's another boundary stone. This whole area was once awash with smugglers.
As you can see on the side, this one is number 25. The smugglers used to say, we'll cross at number 25, and the next day they changed, and they were at number 50. They could be smuggling alcohol or lace, anything that was sellable, really.
Nowadays, you're more likely to find just shepherds and their flocks roaming these mountains.
Come on, keep moving.
20-year-old Marina is a sheep farmer who's followed in her father's footsteps. Today, her herd can wander freely between France and Spain without any problems. But it wasn't always that easy.
Every farmer who took his herd up to La Rune kept a notebook. You weren't allowed to graze your flock on the mountain from sunset until dawn the next morning. It was to stop smuggling and the different exchanges between farmers. Little by little, that's disappeared over the years.
In order to keep the peace, France and Spain have shook hands several times in the past. In the village of Sarre, officials from the surrounding border towns have met regularly since the 18th century to sign farming agreements. It's a tradition that's still highly respected in the Basque country.
So here we have the stone table. We're right on the border here. This is the border marker. So this side is Sarre, and this side is Vera de Bidasoa.
Every 5 years, a special ceremony takes place around this table, one that's much more than just a custom.
There's a festive atmosphere on the day of the signing, but then the hard work begins. When an animal is sick, the French farmers warn the Spanish ones. There's a friendly relationship between breeders.
109 boundary stones further east, there's another pit stop along the border. It's the start of spring, but the Col de la Pierre Saint-Martin mountain pass is still blanketed in snow.
It's starting to really melt now. This one was well hidden before, but now you can just about see it. Here it is, marker number 262.
Back in the 14th century, a row between shepherds over a natural spring here led to the deaths of around 100 people.
We're at peace with the Spaniards, and that's good. But there were real tensions in the past. We were ordered to pay them 3 cows every year for life. Nowadays, they take a check rather than cattle, but it's all still an issue.
It's impossible to go any further. We'll have to wait for the skiers to leave and for the snow to melt to continue our journey. There are still 340 more boundary stones to discover across the Pyrenees before we reach the Mediterranean.